You are now listening to the Going North podcast, where you'll receive tips and techniques to advance yourself. I'm your host, Dom Brightman, and every week we're going to be hearing from an author who's going to share their expertise to help you charge forward in life. On a quick side note, be sure to check out Going North the book. It's available in ebook, audio, as well as paperback form for those who love to read a traditional book. Now let's get on with the show.
And today on the Going North podcast, we have, you guessed it, another author, but not just any author. Well, I'm going to be honored today, and you're going to be honored too by listening to this episode, because we got one heck of a guest for you today. This wonderful gentleman right here, he is a 4-time black belt. And since he's a 4-time black belt, he did something that not many can say that he did, and that was become the founder of a whole martial art. And he happens to be the founder of the martial art titled Yokido, a blend of Aikido and yoga. And he's also a lifelong student, and he's also a millionaire that has lost millions but gained back millions, and is looking to help over 1 million people gain some financial independence. The wonderful founder of Black Belt Wealth, looking to advance others, the one, the only, Damion S. Lupo. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing awesome, Dom. It's great to be here, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure indeed. My pleasure indeed. Let's give the world a short little glimpse into the wonderful Damion. Mind filling in the gaps where I may have missed something?
Holy cow. I mean, there's a tornado of a story, and I think you boiled it down. I mean, the things, if we really ask who is Damion, or, why are people listening, or what's this guy all about, I'm a teacher that's been bloodied and beaten in the field of trying to figure out what my life was all about. And I did the typical checkbox, going out there and making a lot of money and a lot of accomplishments. And I started asking myself, hey, is this everything? Is this all, another $1 million? Is that going to make me happy? Because I think we all are looking for that thing that's going to make us happy, or if not happy, because Aristotle said the point of life is to be happy. I actually think it's fulfillment. It's proof that we're here for a reason that's not just about consumption. And that was what my problem was, especially in my 20s. I just thought, hey, it's all about consumption. How much can I consume? How many cars can I buy? How many dates can I go on? And once you kind of shift past that and realize there's more, there's a bigger picture, there's a deeper fulfillment opportunity, then you start finding your way into something that really opens up the future into something beyond checklists. And that's the process that I went through, which is what sort of happened to get me into a place of founding Yokido and really being on a mission now of freeing 1 million people from financial bondage. It's not about making $1 billion. It's about 1 million people that are freed, that can actually go out there and have a ripple effect and change the world. So that's the essence of who I am now, and what this is all about, and why I'm on the show with you, man, why we're going to wrap and give people some ideas and tools to kind of shift them into that space.
Shifting them into that great space indeed. So it's not an everyday thing where someone just wants to create a new martial art, because that's something that rarely happens. What really spurred that on to you just to really make that happen, and how long did it take?
Man, this is kind of like when you, if anybody that's ever been pregnant, you are either pregnant or you're not. And I got a little pregnant, and which meant I was totally pregnant with this martial art. Like, it was in me. I was gestating, like I had this baby and it needed to come out. And it was because when you go deep enough into something, this magic happens, and it's this miracle. I went 20 years of studying martial arts into a place where there was something new that had been created, like it was like a new life form, and I had to share it. And that's what Yokido became. It was the blend of all this learning and the tens of thousands of hours of study. And once I realized that, I could feel it. You can't just not share it. It's like when people say, I've got a book in me. Well, if that book's really in you, you have to get it out, because it'll make you crazy if you don't get it out. And that's what happened with Yokido.
Amazing, and amen indeed for doing that. So is there a plan in place to turn it into a legacy that stands the test of time, similar to Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do?
I wonder with Bruce Lee if there's really a deep understanding of what the purpose of it is, or if it's really just simply to share and let it take on a life of its own. Because I think if our ego detaches from that thing that is so important to us and we can go out and share it with the world, it sort of just becomes whatever it's supposed to be. And the more people that hear about it, when they understand the idea that you can create this massive amount of wealth and connection in your life without conflict, and you can create this higher enlightened state of lethal kindness where you move through things where you have this massive power and yet there's no aggression involved. When people understand those principles and the very core principle of Yokido, which is presence, getting those three things into your life, it sort of makes people a little obsessed about the idea of studying that because they've missed those pieces in their life. And this gives them a framework to kind of shift everything using one thing.
Indeed, especially with the presence. I guess that kind of goes with the law of awareness, right?
It does. Unfortunately, a lot of people have gotten really mistaken that the law of attraction, because they watch The Secret, is the key to the universe, that if you think really hard, that this bag of money will fall out of the sky and hit you in the head. And this is crazy. I mean, but it sells a lot of videos, and it seems good. You just think your way into wealth. You think your way into freedom. That's not true. You've got to be present enough to realize that the wealth and the freedom is to your left and to your right. It may not be right in front of you, but if you're so wound up, if you've got so much tension and you're just focused and in force, you're going to be tunnel visioned and you're only going to see what's right there in front of you. You're going to miss all this stuff that's around you. It's like trying to track the perfect mate. Well, if you're funnel vision or tunnel vision right in front of you, you're probably going to miss the person that's to your left or right that's standing right next to you because you're not present, you're not relaxed, you're not open. And that's the shift that we can help people make, is grounding down into presence so that the whole world opens up and really the whole world is sitting there waiting for you to look at it.
Yeah, it's very true indeed. It kind of reminds me of this one time the store overheard where this one guy was so focused on this one girl that he forgot and just dodged the 4 or 5 other beautiful ladies that were sitting at the bar that could have been waiting for him because he just forgot. He was so focused on this one person. Yeah,
there is it's a strange space where you can be so obsessed about things, and I think that a healthy obsession can be really powerful because it keeps you completely focused. At the same time, if you're completely focused, you are going to miss out on all the other pretty girls that are off to the left and right and all over the place. So you just have to decide. This is part of being conscious. You decide, am I going to open up? Or am I going to be fixated on this one thing? And when I write books, I am fixated on that one thing. There's nothing else. It's all that one thing. All my energy, all of my love and compassion and empathy for the world is right there in those pages with those words. And that is a healthy obsession. And then I let go of that so that I can actually have a life. Because if you're obsessed with one thing, you forget to eat, you forget to do anything else, and your mortgage, your rent goes away. Like all these things there are side effects to being obsessed. So there's value in it, and there's dangers too. It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, it's very true indeed. Because when you're so passionate about something, people be like, "How do you get any sleep? What fun do you have?"
You're right, exactly.
It's like, yeah, what do you do for fun? Like this is the fun. It's the good obsession. It's like it's not drugs. I'm not like eating bonbons and 10 stacks of waffles. It's like it's just doing something I really love, just like helping people and helping them to get some financial freedom, which is great.
There's something that you guys listening can really own, and that is that if people call you crazy because you're too into your thing, that's probably a good sign. It means you're going to go deep, and you're on a path of mastery. If everybody agrees with you and they don't think you're a little weird or crazy, you're probably just blending in, and your life really isn't going to have a whole lot of purpose for what you really could be there for, or what you could be creating or developing. So if you want to tap into your potential, you're kind of looking for the crazy factor. Are people calling you crazy? Do they not understand you? That's probably a good sign.
Amen. Reminds me of Grant Cardone's last book, Be Obsessed or Be Average.
Boba. I mean, it is. There's something valuable about that. It's when we look out at people that we really look up to, it's not people that are just blending in. It's people that are sticking out. It's people that are willing to stand out and be excellent and really go all in. Those people are the ones that look a little nuts before they look amazing. So if you want to be part of that, if you want to have that experience of living, and I can tell you that if you don't do that, there is another event you're going to have. It's called a regret moment at the end of your life. That is hell on earth. That is the absolute worst possible scenario for your life. I guarantee you, I promise. I had that event with my dad a few weeks before he died. He literally looked at me and said, there were so many things that I wanted to do, and I saw regret. And it was the worst thing I've ever seen. It was the worst feeling. It broke me. And there is nothing worse than seeing that, and I'm sure it might be worse to have it as your own experience, but you got to be willing to step out into that darkness, into that space where you just are willing to shine and be nuts, so that you can look back and go, I put it all out there and I am good. This life was well lived.
Indeed, because it's one thing to just be on your deathbed with all them regrets, and all because you just want to stay in that comfort zone and don't want to have that trigger moment.
There is usually a trigger moment, and if you look back, or maybe we're looking forward, there's a moment where it's kind of something will break us or it'll shake us, and it jars loose whatever was sitting there that it was kind of gunked up. It's kind of like when you stomp down on the gas and you've got an old jalopy and you just push it and you blow all the gunk out of the engine. That trigger moment is that moment where the gas gets hit and it blows apart all of the sediment that's stuck in your life, and then you ask the question, okay, wait, maybe my future shouldn't or couldn't or isn't supposed to be like the past. So what do I need to do different now that I'm all shaken up and I have a moment of conscious awareness right now? What's going to be different? How am I going to shift?
Yeah, it's true, and it's like you either shift forward to greatness or you just shift backward into that basement of, well, not permanent failure, but almost of feeling like lonely and sad and worse off than you started.
Yeah, we do. We tend to drop back down if we're not willing to push into the unknown. And the problem is you just end up staying there, going in a circle. One of the biggest fallacies, one of the biggest myths out there is that failure is a noun, that you are a failure, that failure is not a verb. Failing is a verb. It's something that we do. It's not something that we are. And in school, we're taught that if you make a mistake, you're a failure. And then you start to own that, and that's your identity. And that's the biggest deception, I think, that is out there, and it forces us to go into a state of trying to be perfect. Otherwise, we feel like our life isn't really worth anything. And nothing could be further from the truth. The faster you can fail forward into your greatness, the more important your life will be, the more valuable your experience will be.
Fail forward to greatness. I love it.
It's a choice. It really is a choice. It's a choice you make every day. The question I ask myself is, what am I going to learn today? And it's not a question of what I'm going to read. It's what am I going to do that is going to end up where I stub my toe and it hurts. That's how I know I'm learning. That's how I know I'm growing.
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of like if you got a little one at home with a bunch of Legos. Like, all right, which one of these Legos is going to hurt the most but teach me the most?
Yeah, well, those Legos are really powerful teaching tools as long as you don't swallow them and they get lodged in your throat. I mean, when I think I was 1 or 2 years old, I decided to eat Legos, and I stopped breathing. I mean, I almost died. My parents took me to the hospital, and they were cruising down the road trying to get this thing unlodged. So there are things that we can take on. Like, I do not recommend jumping out of a plane and saying, I'm going to learn how to fly on the route down to the ground. That is a very bad idea if you don't have a parachute. But, it doesn't mean that you can't test that thing and push the limits. You just need to be slightly conscious. And a great way to do this is to have somebody that's around you. The whole idea of coaching and mentoring is this is a powerful thing that you can leverage off of somebody else's wisdom. The gray-haired, the bald people, the people that have been around a few extra decades, those people can see into the future, into your future, because all they're doing is looking into their past and understanding what you're gonna end up facing. That's the leverage that you can tap into, so you don't have to jump out of a plane and try to figure out how to fly on the way down.
Yeah, because that quote is a lot better in theory and in your head than real life. That's not something you want to do.
No, it's a Hollywood superhero scene, and in real life, you can do a lot of things and make them up as you go, but there are certain things that if you mess it up, it's game over, and you don't want to do one of those things. So most things that we do, we think might be a game over scenario if we make a mistake. The truth is most aren't. And if you're not sure which is which, this is where you get some help from people that have been out there and done that.
Amen. So for those who are looking to 10x their wealth and pick up some of your knowledge, especially with the gold and silver guides, and need a good mentor, what advice would you give to them if they're looking to build their wealth?
I think one of the things that we need to really understand is that wealth is made up. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about the wealth that we've really been taught is this certain pile of cash in the bank, and then you're wealthy. And the truth is that money, it's just made up. It's just energy. It's made up. It's printed out of thin air. And when we stop being willing to just go out there and spend all our time for this made-up idea and we start to ask different questions, you can really 10x or 100x your wealth and your life. And the point is you're really moving into a place of freedom. Because if you just go and you work, you trade your 40, 50, 100 hours a week for a pile of cash, you're never going to be free. Doesn't matter how much money you make. I mean, when I was making $250,000 a week, I mean, there's a point where I was making more money than most people will see in their lifetime every month. And those moments, I thought, this is amazing. And I was on the verge of collapsing and breaking down. And if you want to have true wealth, I think that is financial freedom. I think that is a place where you own your time. You've got to ask different questions like, what the heck is wealth? Is it freedom or is it cash? And in my mind, it is that freedom. So asking better questions, that's what I do when I teach people, when I mentor them, the books that I write and the tools that I have on my website. It's really asking different questions because you're going to have the answers if somebody asks you the right questions. That's the key. That's where you're going to find all the juice.
Amen, indeed. So do you want freedom or cash? Can't have both, right?
Well, cash is tools. Cash is the tool. It gives you options. But the truth is, all cash does is amplify whoever you are. So if you think about who you are and you're scared, you're going to be more scared with cash. If you are stingy and greedy, you're going to be more stingy and more greedy. If you're generous, you're going to be more generous. And if you're free, you're going to be more free with cash. It's going to give you even more tools. So it's like fuel on the fire. That's all it is. If your fire is a certain way, you're gonna fuel that thing up and make it hotter. So whoever you are, make sure you want more of that because that's what cash is going to provide.
Indeed, because I remember, I think it was in the first early chapters, you mentioned, I think it was, $77,000 a month at one time before the crash of 2008?
Yeah, no, when I realized I was burning $1 million a year, $70-some-odd thousand a month, most people would say, 70,000, I'm good if I have that every year. That's amazing. I couldn't even tell you what I was spending that money on. And it's because Parkinson's law, it says that we just expand our expenses into our income. So as I kept making more money, I was expanding my expenses. My life wasn't getting better. It was just getting more chaotic, more nutty, and more noisy. So it's a fascinating thing to think about. If you had $1 million in expenses, would your life be better? I didn't say $1 million in income. I said $1 million in expenses. What would that be like? What would that be like to manage? Is that simple? It sounds to me like chaos. And for most people, it would be, just imagine 10 times as many things that you've got to manage as you are now. If you're making $70,000 a year, imagine $70,000 a month in stuff that you got to deal with. That's a lot of chaos, a lot of moving parts.
Agreed, especially if you're in a small living quarters and stuff to the freaking ceiling with stuff and just connecting that to like $1 million in expenses. Oh my gosh. Be crazy.
I don't recommend it. I recommend getting really, really happy and really grounded with a very basic life and then expanding it in a direction that suits you, that makes you happy, that makes you fulfilled. More stuff is not necessarily more fulfillment. More stuff, just because all this stuff has energy, whether it's cars or gadgets, or if you're a hoarder or you need to have more trips because that makes you feel more energized. Maybe you can have a lot of fulfillment from the one trip. Maybe 10 is even better, but more isn't better. More is just more. Remember that, and then understand that you're going to get whatever you're really conscious to getting from whatever it is or whatever the experience is. But that whole idea that more is better is probably one of the dumbest ideas that's out there.
It's true indeed, because you could probably pick up 5 declutter home organizers and to organize all the stuff, but then it's like, you still have the stuff with you, then they have all that energy in there you have to manage, like you said earlier. So it's really pointless.
Yep. If you're managing clutter with more clutter, that is an indicative of a problem that you should probably get professional help with.
Yes, sir, and call your local therapist that has good reviews.
That's right.
So out of all your trials that you had to overcome, and there was a lot of them, what would be probably the one that you would say was probably the most valuable that triggered you into the Damion that you are today?
I think the biggest shift is realizing that the material stuff is not who we are, and that when I looked at people that I was going to learn from, and when I modeled, I was modeling off of the surface, off the external. I wasn't modeling on the internal. And what I mean by that is I was looking at people that had really big lives full of houses and cars and just like, they had a lot of success. And I didn't understand what the true modeling would be for me to do. And that was for people that were genuinely happy. Doesn't mean those things you can't have happy. They're not, one, what you can't have, you can have one and the other. But I wasn't really focusing on the inner piece. And I talk about this in Reinvented Life, that if I was to model again, and I model all the time, if I was doing it for the first time, I would look to people that were deeply happy and that had created a life of impact and on other people, not just on their own experience. There was one friend of mine that has made about $100 million in his life, And he had every external thing you can imagine: amazing house, cars, trips, lived this amazing life. But inside, he and his wife are scared to death because they don't really understand how to create. They just kind of had a lottery ticket event. And so if you think a lottery is going to make you happy, I thought that myself. It's not really true. True financial freedom comes from the confidence that you're able to create and that you're able to have an impact. Once you shift into that space where you believe that it becomes your truth, you are truly free. And the money it's funny, it sort of takes care of itself. I didn't realize that in my 20s. It took me until my mid-30s to even start to get that.
Hey, it happens to the best of us. The shiny objects always grab somebody every now and then.
That's right. Those shiny objects tend to keep us distracted. Now we have digital shiny objects in our Facebook and our Twitter and our Instagram feeds, and there's never an end to it. You just think about how our feeds, how they show up and how we see them, experience them. There's no end. You just keep going and going and going, and you become something for somebody else's agenda. Like Mark Zuckerberg becomes the dominant force pulling you through life, and I don't think Mark knows what's best for you. I think you probably do.
Amen to that indeed. I kind of like to joke around with people, say that the zombie apocalypse is already here. It's called folks staring at the smartphones all day, walking around not being aware.
Exactly.
Distraction city, baby. Well, speaking of distractions, but more on the positive side of distractions, if you were to name your top 3 books that really propelled you and that really helped you out the most, and I know you read probably around 5 books at a time, so this might be a tough question for you. So what top 3 books would you recommend others to read that have really helped you out personally?
The 3 most important books I would say for anybody are Mastery by George Leonard, because our lives are really more than just doing things. They're really going deep into things, and mastery is a lifelong process. It's not a checkbox. And Principles, everything that we do in life really should be based on principles and not just knee-jerk reactions. Ray Dalio wrote that one last year. And the third book, and the reason this is so important is because when you write a book about your life and you have to teach from your experiences, it forces you to understand the lessons, and that was Reinvented Life. It was what I had to go through to understand life at a different level, an energetic level, and not just a hedonistic experience of consuming things. So those 3 books would change anybody's life if they read them and really were present to the lessons that are built into them.
Indeed, Reinvented Life is great. Just finished that today, and the questions are powerful. And the Mastery book, that one was also really good. I think it was 91 when that book first came out.
It's a classic. Unfortunately, George Leonard is no longer here. He passed away. He was one of these guys that committed his life to mastery, and in his martial arts teaching and training, it was about going deeper and deeper. It wasn't about more techniques or more things, really crazy ninja moves. It was really about going into a deeper state of presence and awareness, and that can be a lesson for all of us.
Yes, sir, indeed. That book is really, really good. I think it's like 180 pages, pocket size, one of the best books you can possibly read.
I agree. One of the top books of all time, in my opinion. It's a book. When people talk about Think and Grow Rich or Rich Dad Poor Dad, those are like no-brainers. You got to read those things. The book Mastery is one that doesn't get spoken about all that often, and in truth, you can learn the lessons. But if you don't understand that life is about going deep, Malcolm Gladwell talks about this in Outliers, into that space of 10,000 hours that you invest into one thing. If you don't go deep, you're never really going to understand the depth of what life is all about. It's just going to be a bunch of surface level experiences that really aren't going to teach you a whole lot. It's just going to be really interesting. But how many shiny squirrels can really make you happy?
Freaking have diamond encrusted walnuts for the squirrels.
That's right.
And then the squirrels will have lowriders instead. Oh, man. Great list indeed. Still need to pick up Ray Dalio's book. That one's a huge read, definitely. I have to take that one in chunks.
Dalio is no joke. A guy built Bridgewater over 40 years from nothing to tens of billions of dollars into one of the biggest hedge funds in the country, if not the world. It's a fascinating way to build a business based on a culture of radical transparency. It is a book you study. It's not a book you just breeze through like a Harry Potter novel. That guy is somebody that I have a lot of respect for, and I think anybody that reads the book, you're going to look at life, business, and in life very, very differently, assuming that you decide to shift into a life based on principles and not just whatever feels good in the moment.
Amen indeed, because emotions, they do not stick at all.
No. emotions are fleeting. They come and they go, and until you shift into a place where you can observe yourself and be a witness to what's going on and not be in the middle of the fight all the time, your emotions are going to dominate. And there's a powerful shift when you can let go, or at least you can step outside and watch and then make an actual intelligent decision based on what you see versus acting to the emotions inside of the conflict.
Almost like water. It's like it almost takes shape of whatever time it is.
Exactly. That is really true.
So with all of your amassed knowledge and accomplishments and trials of woe to greatness, and you had all this knowledge, and you were 25 once again in the year of 2018 with all the tools to boot, what advice would you give to yourself?
One of the things that we tend to do is be very, very short-sighted, and we don't understand the value in sticking to anything. Things are changing rapidly, and sometimes it's really powerful to say, no, thank you, or I quit, or I'm moving on. The problem now is that 25-year-olds see many, many things as disposable, if not everything, whether it's relationships with an app, they swipe left, they swipe right. There's jobs we go into and we say, that didn't work, I'll go to the next thing. And it's because it's hard, or I'm not making enough as fast. There's this really sad sense that because I am in this country or this time, there's people that are making $1 billion in 18 months in their companies, and that should be me. And my advice would be that you can create an overnight success story if you're willing to give something 10 years. And that is really hard for people to get their arms around. I think for the average 25-year-old, it's hard to get their arms around doing anything for 5 years. And that's where the juice is. I mean, you're not going to learn anything and be powerful in a couple of years. It takes a while. And then all of a sudden there's this thing called a plateau pop where you cruise along and you'll pop and you'll go, what happened? Like it happens in martial arts where you're doing the same thing for years and then all of a sudden something just happens where it's easy and it's flowing and you don't feel like you're doing anything and it's working. So if you're willing to stick with something, it doesn't mean you stick with the wrong thing. It means you stick with the right thing and you go deep into it. That's the missing piece. I see people willing to throw away whatever they're doing, and they have to start over at the end of a new line, and that's frustrating because you're always at the end. You're always the junior person in whatever it is, your industry, your work, your company, and if you can focus and you can stick with something, it's amazing what can happen all of a sudden. Out of nowhere, you'll be the overnight success story that took 10 years to build up.
Yeah, it's true indeed. The overnight success is really, like I said, 10 years of doing a lot of midnight oil activities overnight for a long time.
That's what it looks like, whether it's Justin Bieber or Britney Spears or any of these people, and we think, they made it overnight. They're 18, 19, 20 years old, and they're this huge success. No, they started when they were 4 years old. And so it took 10, 15 years for these people to pop. So if we really understand that, it gives us a little frame. If you're just starting out and you're 20, 22, 25 years old, understand things do take time, and not every story is a Snapchat $1 billion overnight type of event. If you can get that, I think it'll take a lot of the frustration away from things not happening in a matter of weeks or months.
Indeed, because the quantum leaps aren't for anybody, because if you get too much power too soon, it'll probably crumble too soon.
That's it. You rise fast, you fall fast. If you don't build a foundation, it's going to go away as fast as it showed up.
So for those who want to build up a great foundation by following what you're doing and joining your financial independence campaign, how can we keep in touch with you?
Best place to go is to go to DamionLupo.com and opt in for the Transformation Nation podcast that I'm doing that'll have more of these tools, more of the lessons, and really give you everything that you need in terms of the questions to ask so that you can open yourself up to creating greatness and having a life that's well-lived and fulfilled.
That's what I'm talking about. Be sure to pick up all of his books, too. Reinvented Life, that is a great one, as well as The Gold Guide, a nice, quick, one-sitting read. Out of all the books in terms of like investing in gold and silver, it's probably the best one I've read because it's so clear as day, plain in your face, straight to the point.
I appreciate that. I think that there's a value in finding things that simplify the complex. Any idiot can write a complex book that nobody can understand. That's the value is finding those things that are simplified to where you can take action on them. And hopefully that's what the Gold Book does. It gives you enough to where you can take action and you're not stuck wallowing and wandering around the information.
Especially if you're wandering around on some ice. That's nowhere you want to wander.
Exactly.
Thanks a bunch for your listening ears on the Going North podcast. I hope you really enjoyed that episode. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to share it with your friends and family, especially those who love podcasts and love listening to some inspiration and motivation. And keep a lookout for the sequel to Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself in October 2018. If you'd like to connect with me directly, feel free to shoot me an email at dombraidman@gmail.com.